There are currently nearly 19 billion smart devices worldwide. Chances are you probably have one in your home. From robot vacuum cleaners, to smart refrigerators, to security cameras and baby monitors, internet-connected air fryers.
Having everything in your home connected to Wi-Fi just means there's so much more risk of hacking and attacks, and your data essentially just being exposed through people who want it.
Today, we'll do a deep dive into the security of smart home devices, and we'll chat with Wired Senior Review Editor Julian Chokkattu to discuss the pros and cons of bringing smart devices into your home. This is Incognito Mode. One of the most convenient smart devices out there is robot vacuums. What am I kind of opening myself up to when I put one of these devices in my house?
You have this robot that's going around your entire home and it creates an entire map of your home. The convenience is that you can then say, hey, can you go clean the kitchen specifically? But that is data that's stored by the company, and you would want to check how that data is stored.
A few years ago, it was reported that images leaked from an iRobot vacuum cleaner, such as a woman sitting on a toilet, were sent to a third party for labeling and testing, but eventually they made their way onto Discord and even Facebook. From that leak, we know that iRobot was capturing images not just to map out the house, but also to identify everything in the house, such as a vase or a couch. This is a prime example of how the data that these companies collect can be used in ways that you might not expect.
You definitely, I think, would want to just avoid using a camera-based system just because it does open up the risk of it capturing the actual mapping data of your home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can imagine how a robot vacuum company would sell that data to marketers for home decor or, couches and things like that.
Nowadays, some companies are using LiDAR to map out your home rather than a camera on it, so that the robot vacuum knows where to go.
How's the technology evolving? Is there anything new that you're seeing coming out?
Yeah, this past CES, actually, there was a company that basically debuted a robot vacuum that has a little arm that comes out. Well, the camera on the actual robot vacuum can detect socks, for example, and it has the capability to go over to them, grab it, and put them in a specific area so that it's not disrupting the flow of the robot vacuum as it cleans your home. There was also something about potentially a little laser pointer that could help entertain the cat so that the cat's not disturbing it. You can then theoretically also imagine what other things are going to be coming to that sort of a type of a device that roams your house, right? Some new ones are trying to do stair climbing capabilities so that they can go upstairs so that you don't have to physically move your vacuum up and down. It has that potential to sort of be that futuristic AI butler that maybe we've seen in shows in the past. That also obviously is going to open that category up to a little more scrutiny in terms of what exactly it's capable of. And if it can pick up a sock, maybe it can pick up a knife.
The dream of having a robot butler is potentially coming true. We're just going to have to sacrifice our security and potentially our privacy to get that future.
I think that was a given, though, in general, from all the sci-fi robot butlers that we've seen.
Sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Smart TVs are doing a lot more than just playing your favorite movies and shows. They're also collecting a massive amount of information. Many TVs nowadays include something called automatic content recognition, or ACR. Researchers found that some ACR systems capture 48,000 snapshots of what you're watching per second.
Yeah, I think today it's probably very hard to find a very high-end TV with no smart features. By default, most TVs today have those streaming apps built in and some casting capabilities as well. They're also more comprehensive in how they're tracking what you watch and the data that they're collecting.
Taking snapshots of what you're watching all the time. I mean, I understand why the companies would want to do that, but I don't understand how that really benefits me at all.
So in general, TVs are becoming more and more of an ad platform, even though you might think that cutting the cable cord was all about getting away from advertisements. That's all sort of coming back. Like, more streaming platforms than ever now have some type of an ad tier that's slightly cheaper, if not free. But of course, there's like a separate part of it, whether they're sharing that data with third parties so that Netflix can understand and know that, like, oh, people liked this, they're actually watching this. That's something that companies want, that data, in terms of just who is watching what and for how long and what you're doing on your TV in general. ACR might even work with dumbed down devices. So it's not even just connecting a streaming stick, for example, or using an app. It's connecting a Blu-ray player and putting in a DVD. You might think that might be completely fine and offline, but apparently company might still know that you were watching Titanic for the 15th time on DVD.
What are some ways to make sure that your data is protected if you do have one in your house?
You might be able to, I think, delete your advertising profile so that they don't have like a visual understanding of what it is, who you are in terms of your tastes and the ads that they want served to you. But a lot of that is also somewhat hidden and not the most obvious places. Always, it's something I do a lot. I hop into the settings of almost everything I test and just take a look at what capabilities are there, what features are there, but also, what permissions does this service need?
I'm a tech journalist and I still find menus on my TV to be kind of baffling, and you might not know that's even there or that's even an option or that this data is being collected in the first place.
It's worth going through those settings and definitely trying to make sure that you're understanding at least what it is that it's collecting about you. So the voice assistants, they're always listening. The mic input is on, but they only start recording once it thinks it's heard a wake word, and then that audio is captured. A large part of these voice assistants on these smart speakers is connecting to other smart home devices, right? So the whole purpose behind them was if I'm going to get smart shades, or if I'm going to get a security camera or a smart thermostat, I can just say, hey, set the thermostat to 68, or hey, can you close the shades in the bedroom? But obviously, you've invited a thing that is constantly listening.
Yeah, it's one that I really struggle with because it is so convenient, and especially if you're a person with mobility issues, it allows you to do things you might not otherwise be able to do, but it really creeps me out. I had one for a while and I decided after it stopped working to just not try to make it work anymore.
And there are some things you could do, like there are usually physical mic switches on these smart speakers that allow you to turn off the mics when they're just not in use. But then it kind of goes against the whole purpose of like being able to just quickly ask a question if you have to go to the device and turn on the mic. But it's just what you're willing to accept in terms of security.
Even if you had certain privacy protections when you bought a smart speaker, like an Amazon Echo, you don't necessarily know if those protections are going to change. For example, Amazon updated its terms of service so that users of its Echo devices can no longer opt out of sending their voice recordings to the company.
It might not seem like there's been a lot happening in this space, but there's actually now going to be another bit of a wave, I think, in terms of these devices, because now it's all about incorporating artificial intelligence. For example, Google is upgrading a lot of its Nest products with Gemini, its large language model, so that it can understand things like the ability to recognize a FedEx driver coming up to your doorway, and then you later on asking, hey, did FedEx come by today? Because large language models have large data sets that they can train on, they're now capable of that more natural, free-flowing conversation, which might mean that there are going to be new devices that people might want to upgrade to, or those capabilities might come to older devices.
That's a perfect example of how these risks can be introduced when you get a device. Like, you might be getting a device with certain features and certain settings, and then things change, or the company gets sold, and you don't necessarily have control over your data in those situations. If you have an older Alexa device and you don't want your recordings being sent to Amazon, you basically just have to decide whether you're going to keep that device and keep using it at all.
Smart locks, the selling point is you don't have to necessarily carry your key, although I highly recommend if you have a smart lock to still carry your keys because they rely on batteries. You can even share your passcodes with family and friends so that they can enter your home if you're away, if they need to check on a dog. But there are more risks because now you've put the keys to your home in a digital platform, and that just might not be great from a security standpoint. If something does get hacked, someone could theoretically enter your home, or at least capture, like if your smart lock has a camera on it or a microphone, it could capture some data from that as well.
It's kind of ironic that something that's like literally for security could then be less secure just because you're adding these more convenient features.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of locks have the ability to auto unlock as you approach, and that most of the time relies on your phone's location, which means when you enter a specific area of your geofenced area of your home, the door will unlock. That, I feel like, to me at least, seems like a potential data point that someone would love to have if they wanted to target you specifically. There are some security standards you can probably look for. Are they following AES 128-bit encryption? Is the app two-factor authenticated? How physically capable it is as a lock? Whether it's a retrofit over your existing deadbolt, so it might not change the entire hardware. That might be better than something that completely replaces your hardware, especially if it's from a company that doesn't have a history of making locks, but also making sure that the company has a good track record in following best practices to keep your data secure.
Another issue that kind of applies to all these smart devices is them going out of date and just not getting firmware updates, and then you need to replace the whole thing. Once you've installed a lock, you're not gonna go out and install another one anytime soon, or you hope that you don't have to.
Yeah, and a lot of capabilities are usually updated through the app itself. But obviously, as you said, it's one thing to make sure that, especially if it's been 10 years or so since you installed a smart lock, probably just check that there are security updates still being issued.
Do companies stop issuing software updates or security patches because there's some good reason for that, or are they just trying to get you to buy another one of the products?
I mean, I think companies have it in their power, especially big companies, to offer significantly longer software update cycles for, these kinds of devices. Whether there's also an element of planned obsolescence and they want you to upgrade to the next thing, I'm sure that is definitely also a big part of it. That's kind of why we encourage people to look at some of the bigger brands, because if anyone is going to at least support a product for something like a decade, it's probably the company that has those resources. Definitely, we could stand to ask and force companies to require that some of these products that especially you don't expect to change that often should get support cycles that reflect that. Companies are sort of pitching, again, convenience in terms of a Samsung smart fridge might have a display on the outside that's basically a tablet, and you might be able to leave sticky notes for everyone in the house, or you might be able to even play YouTube videos to follow recipes along. But also in the inside, they could have cameras, and cameras could be used to detect the types of things that are inside your fridge so that you can even look at remotely into your fridge.
Like here, when I need to check the milk situation.
And it's true, some of that is convenient, but especially with something like their Family Hub line of refrigerators where there's a display on the outside, you have to know that you're probably going to have to sign in. YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is you want to have on this essentially a tablet display. All of that is now under the protection of what this fridge brand is doing to keep your data secure.
You make a really great point about it being another point of failure and just kind of introducing complexity into your life and thus risk, because if it's designed, it can be hacked.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of people that are going to hack your fridge and look at what is in your fridge, but it does mean they might get other compromising information from you, right?
It's not just big appliances like refrigerators and stoves that are connected to the internet. It's almost everything, from coffee makers to toasters to even air fryers. One report found that some air fryers were automatically collecting personal data and sending it back to the company. Others were asking for things like gender and date of birth.
There's a whole other side to it as well in terms of repairability and long-term durability of if there's a screen and there's a screen is the only way for you to, interact with your oven. What happens if you accidentally drop a cast iron pan on it and now it's broken and now you can't really configure your oven or you can't interact with it. Now you have to spend that money to get it repaired. It's going to be more expensive. And also in terms of just, how long it's supported for over time if a particular feature breaks and the only way to interact with it is through the software, but there's a glitch and a company's not going to update it anymore, now you have fewer options in what you can actually do outside of just dumping that entire smart oven. Security cameras obviously have to be recording. Usually companies offer some type of a cloud-based plan where you can store video data for 30 days, for example, and after that it's deleted. Some security cameras also let you record directly to local storage, although there have been certain incidents where what was promised as local storage ended up also accidentally going over to the cloud. You also do want to make sure any video that is sent over to the cloud for example, the convenience of being able to look at your footage from a remote location when you're not home, that it's encrypted so that people can't just look at your streams.
Storing the footage locally is definitely better for privacy, but it also, you have to have the technical know-how to secure that storage. If somebody did want to target you for some reason, then they would be able to potentially gain access to hundreds of hours of footage of your family or whatever you've pointed the camera at.
Right. Nowadays, security cameras aren't just also cameras. They have algorithms and facial recognition features. So there's that other aspect of the data that they're collecting. Now a big new thing that a lot of these companies are trying to pivot to is using artificial intelligence so that, you can just ask your Google Home app or your Alexa, hey, did FedEx come by today? And it'll have understood what is a FedEx employee, what they generally look like, what the clothes they wear is if they're holding a package. And you can even ask things like, is there a package for me at the front door? You can even add people's names if you really want, in terms of like, oh, that's my wife.
Brittany is at the front door.
I didn't know that they are building facial recognition and image recognition into these home devices that extensively, and that's quite frankly terrifying.
Yeah, a lot of that, I believe, is completely on device and local, so I don't think that information is being shared. The idea is that because a lot of them will say person detected, right? They have person detection, animal detection. Instead of just getting these arbitrary person detected, which might not provide you much value, it might be more helpful if it says XYZ came up to your front door and that person's a friend.
I think that's a really great example of how these privacy erosions happen. A company builds in a new feature that solves like a minor problem or makes it, 10% better, but then you've introduced this new acceptance of just having facial recognition everywhere, and everyone is then just like, yeah, that's just how cameras work. It's just that becomes the norm.
So Ring is another big part of all of this. They weaponized in some ways their video doorbells and security cameras by sharing information and footage with local police departments in the past.
That's really how Ring was built, was by going to local police departments, giving them the ability to offer people in their community deals through the police department to buy Ring cameras. And then in turn, Ring had really close relationships with police. They had a specific feature that allowed somebody to share their footage directly with the police department. Solving crime is great. Nobody wants crime. The issue is that it really rapidly indoctrinated people to just constant corporate surveillance. I worked on one investigation several years ago where we were able to map every Ring camera in a specific area, and we were able to see, like, if a child is going to walk to school, they're going to pass 75 Ring cameras, and they're going to be just subjected to this surveillance. And that data is collected by a corporation. Ring is owned by Amazon, and we don't know necessarily what that footage is going to be used for. And I think it's more just becoming comfortable with making constant surveillance the norm.
The convenience of that Wi-Fi capability in baby monitors is basically the ability to remotely look at and monitor your baby, even if you're not at home. Like if you have a nanny taking care of the baby, you can check on the baby yourself if you're away. But obviously all of that introduces all of these potentials for violating your privacy. There was a story of like a woman who found that there was some stranger whispering through her baby monitor, and that's terrifying. That's creepy.
So while security cameras and baby monitors are very similar in terms of their functionality, there's some reporting that shows even the best Wi-Fi connected baby monitors are less secure than regular security cameras. A lot of times you see companies that make something that's not historically Wi-Fi connected, and they start adding in those capabilities. They just don't have the team that knows how to add the security measures, and so they just haven't invested in security as the top priority as they add new features or new capabilities.
A lot of these smart home devices, especially something like a baby camera, like when you're setting it up, you would want to make sure that there is a two-factor authenticated method of signing in securely, so that even if your password is compromised, a threat actor can't hop in and just willingly access everything. They would need a secondary device for you to authenticate that it is you.
That should apply to every device or app that you can possibly add to factor two. Definitely do that. I'd say it's one of those situations where you kind of really have to look at the risk versus reward. And I think taking the steps to make sure your baby cam is as secure as possible is really imperative, because it's monitoring the most sensitive and precious thing in your life. Smart thermostats are great. They can lower your energy bill and tell you if something's wrong in your HVAC system. But they also collect a ton of sensitive data, like when you go to sleep, when you're away from home. If that information is accessed by hackers, that could tell someone when they should break into your house. It's also probably being collected for advertising purposes. What coffee company wouldn't love to know exactly when you wake up to serve you an ad for their brand of brew?
the convenience is that you can set your temperature from wherever you are. You don't have to go to the product itself. You can even have functionality like understanding when you're not home, and it'll then automatically lower temperatures or maybe even turn off certain systems so that you're not wasting energy. Some of that is based on location data with your phone, maybe. For example, I think Google's Nest thermostat now has radar in it, so it understands when you're approaching it. The device lights up with all the information. There are smart thermostats that have voice assistants built in, like Alexa, for example. But I think it might be good practice to just let that be handled by an actual hub or something else, and let your smart thermostat just not have a microphone or camera.
The benefits outweigh kind of the risks, I think, for me with this one, except for the fact that they are another entry point for a hacker to gain access to your network. I would say buy the ones that have the fewer features, don't have the microphones, don't have voice assistants, making them as simple as possible while still getting the benefits of having a smart thermostat is probably the way to go. A router is not really a smart device. It's just the thing that everything in your home is going to connect to. Routers are one of the most attacked devices because they serve as a gateway to the rest of your network. They're also really low-hanging fruit. Most people don't change the default password, and so hackers are able to get that information or crack those passwords and get into your network. If a hacker gets into your Wi-Fi, they can see anything that's connecting to the internet attached to your network, potentially collect unencrypted communications, and they may be able to gain access to the devices and the data that your devices are collecting.
So studies show that most people don't change the password on their routers. What really is the worst case scenario in that situation?
I'd say the worst case scenario is that someone gains persistent access to your network. Those devices and potentially any data that those devices are collecting, or monitor you in the way that you're monitoring yourself. Routers are kind of the window into your home. Usually it's you looking through that window by your smart fridge app or your smart toaster or whatever it might be. In this case, the router is the entry point for anybody who is trying to gain access to your network to gain access. And so that's why the security of your router is just as important as anything else, if not more important. So one of the issues with routers is that you have to replace them occasionally. Can you tell me why that is? Like, why would I have to trade in for a new router?
There's no law that says, hey, a router should be updated or kept updated for 10 years. There is a story of Wi-Fi itself. There's new versions coming every few years. So right now, the latest generation is Wi-Fi 7. So there are better security protocols in Wi-Fi 7 versus Wi-Fi 5, right? So there are genuine reasons that you would want to stay on the latest hardware. And while newer routers are backwards compatible with older Wi-Fi standards, you won't be able to access those improved security measures without actually upgrading to a Wi-Fi 7 router, for example.
If you're looking to buy a smart device and you are thinking about your privacy and security, what's some advice you have for people for what to look for or what to avoid?
You probably want to stick to some well-known established brands. They have a better track record and the resources to have a security team, to have security practices and follow the best approach. Being able to patch and quickly update devices if there is a security breach. It's not about if your company's product gets hacked. It's about when. And one other thing you could also do is, when you're shopping for a device, do you really need X feature, right? Like checking to see if your robot vacuum has LiDAR, for example, which is what cars use rather than a camera on it. A security camera. Should you buy one with a privacy shutter so that you don't have to keep unplugging it every time? Look at all the features that the product provides. If there's a genuine need for something like that Wi-Fi connectivity, which it enables, then is there a way to at least mitigate that type of risk by opting for technology that is a little more privacy friendly?
Here are 6 things you can do right now to make your home more safe if you use smart devices. First, use a strong password and definitely make sure you're not using the default password that comes with your device. Make sure you turn on 2-factor or multi-factor authentication whenever available. Always make sure your software is up to date on both your companion apps and on the devices themselves. Make sure your router is secure. That means changing the password, changing the network name, and upgrading the connection to be encrypted if possible. Do your research, make sure you're getting them from a reputable company that has a good track record with handling your data and dealing with data breaches. Set up separate Wi-Fi networks. That way, your laptop and other sensitive devices are not connected to the same network as all your smart devices. This was Incognito Mode. Until next time.